My contact event in Duncan is incredibly short. This is where I experienced the mantis in the White Room. And the place is ripe with paranormal activity. I had no idea what Duncan actually was. And for those who live in Duncan, so that's the rough area of my contact event, because I can't remember the exact farm I was at. But there's 2 missing 411 cases out here. Both of them are hunters. Both of them are previously searched areas. And then the bodies show up years later in the exact area that they were searched. But that's very weird. And they're so similar, both of these. They occur in such close proximity. 1943, 1944. This one's Shawnigan Lake. This one's Cowichan Lake. We're just talking kilometers away from each other. So yeah, the Shawnigan Lake is... Shawnigan Lake is over here, and Cowichan Lake is over this way. So, but they're in the same rough proximity area, and they're just so oddly similar. Hunters who go missing close to people, not close, but they're within party groups. This Leslie Heal one is also really interesting. It's very similar to the documentary that David Paulides did, in which he goes out with a group of hunters. They all span out, covering a mountainside. They hear a gunshot and a yell, but they don't think too much about it. And then when they try to come back together, they don't find anybody. And then they realize that the gunshot and yell might have been consistent with Leslie experiencing something. But again, if this was a UFO activity, having a yell and a shot means he was most likely approached by an entity, something he saw that made him fire off his gun and also yell. If it was a UFO, it wouldn't have done that. It would have been from above and you wouldn't have seen it. So again, it's something that's not consistent with UFO activity. It's something that's consistent with something living in the forest that he's interacting with. Again, those are, and again, a hunter, what are people going to do when they're hunting is that they're looking to kill something in the forest. So that's really interesting. The UFO sightings in the area, though, at the time were up, though. 1947, this was in the paper. Mr. George Clayward's company police officer for Honeymoon Bay. So large light objects careening through the sky. The saucers sped across the heavens and dipped in undulating motion. 1948, so this one was really huge. A woman and a husband en route from Cowichan Lake to from Duncan. So they're here, they're going here. There's a road right here. I've driven on this road. They were enveloped in a green light. When she looked above, she saw, I remember letting out a gasp. The sight I saw was unbelievable. There, hovering just above the trees, was a high round shape. From all around, in green and yellow lights were pulsating around it. This thing was huge, covered, and continued to hover, and I stared spellbound. Suddenly, it was positively shot out of sight. The Victoria Day columnist wrote about this following morning with an article of a flying object over Duncan. One lady who was taking out her garbage can saw it and fainted. So there were, legitimate people who saw an object in green, and it was in this area here.
And can I just say that final bit, the lady who was taking out the garbage can and fainted, maybe she came to after an abduction experience, but in those days they didn't even know it was an abduction.
Oh, you got it, man. Yeah, interesting. I love how you really gravitated towards this next one. This is the nurse. So yeah, like this is the stuff of nighttime tales for children in the books of mysterious. UFO occupants seen near hospital. So this is in Cowichan, right over here. Lake Cowichan is a hospital, and the woman, this is her hospital, opens the blinds, and a UFO is standing there, not lit up. She sees occupants inside. She's spellbound, staring at it. The men inside, they're humanoids. They don't see her. They're doing something on controls. She's still spellbound. She's with other nurses in the room. She's seen watching. All of a sudden, the one man, tall, stands and turns around and knows he's being watched. He sees her. He says something to the other man in the controlling the controls. He does something else, and then the craft lights up and turns red. That's when another nurse comes around the corner and says, "What are you looking at?" And then this big bright red object is now moving away. And so the other nurse only witnesses a bright red object really close by. As it's cresting the forest, the trees, all the other nurses come around and they all see it. So you have a bunch of witnesses. You have a bunch of consistent testimony. And then it's really fascinating. There's a whole report that's done on it. And the report is, UFO occupants seen near hospital. So they did a massive report on it. All these other people in the same area witnessed the same thing. And the light was seen by many other observers. So it's just a very fascinating story. Even a judge witnessed something very similar. So Judge George Hallett and his wife and 3 dinner guests, right? They all witnessed a huge orange colored light passing slowly over the waterfront close to their home at Mill Bay. So she saw it at Lake Cowichan, and then over at Mill Bay, they saw something. So over here is Mill Bay. So yeah, consistency with the craft. These are other people. Miss Drummond saw it, who saw it over the lake. Over
I was
going
to say, I've got another illustration there of the Canadian nurses.
Right.
Could you see that?
Yeah, you can see it a little bit. Yeah, it's similar craft. Yeah, you can see 2 men.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that was the detail. And if you remember, we had Vanessa, who came up onto Vancouver UFO a couple of years ago, talking about her experiences in the UK. She actually saw a very similar craft with the people looking directly inside and seeing them.
Oh, right.
And again, we had that famous case from the 1950s in England, again described as a Mexican hat, which is not too dissimilar to this, with beings seen inside in a clear cockpit.
Right.
So these are
interesting.
These very all
Mexican hat, clear cockpit. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and this one, it turns red. So for those who, I was saying the red orbs are gray aliens, I can't say that they're all the time, because this one turned red, and then it's kind of similar reddy orange. Yeah, but I just thought that was really fascinating. Anyway, that's in the area of my contact event, and it's famous. It's it's so famous, Ian knew about it as a kid.
I did. It was in my very first UFO book, Investigating UFOs, or Investigating Flying Saucers, maybe it was called, by Larry Kettelkamp. My very first UFO book.
That's awesome. That's weird stuff. And this is like they just connect that the whole area at the time had UFO sightings. So this is the mayor, and then he had a witness. He was a witness of a sighting as well too, the mayor of Duncan. So fascinating stuff. Okay, so this gets really weird. The whole area of Duncan turned out to be a hotspot, and I didn't know about that. And Mount Provost, right off the mountain. This is Mount Provost here. So right outside the city of Duncan, you got Mount Provost. 3 people witnessed a large rectangle in the sky several kilometers away. Oh, this one, slowly disintegrating with pieces looking like they were falling to the ground amongst welding-like sparks. Hey, Ian, isn't that similar to the Rendlesham Forest?
The sparks that fell off.
Yeah. So in the Rendlesham Forest, the military men are witness. I thought I remembered they said it was an eye, and it was like melted lava or molten pieces were falling off, but there was no evidence of any material on the ground. Just these things were falling off that looked like it was sparks. Yeah.
That's right. They did describe that, because what was interesting as well was that on that same, or on one of the nights that the craft was seen in the forest, there was also the famous Cash Landrum event in Texas, where Betty Cash and her, I can't remember if it was her mother and her grandson, they were traveling in a car, and they saw this huge object being escorted by these, I believe it was 21 Chinook helicopters.
That's right.
And they also witnessed bits falling off it like molten lava.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
A very similar thing. But this happened at exactly the same time frame as the Rendlesham Forest incident.
That's the one where she got burned, right? That's the evidence they left, was that they got burnt. I think the grandma.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and suffered most likely radiation poisoning.
Radiation poisoning, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And died,
so that's
died of it.
You got welding and falling apart here. Yeah, you get no evidence of any actual missing pieces, but they witnessed a large rectangle falling apart in the sky. I thought that was really interesting. In Duncan in 2000, 5 teenagers and young adults witnessed 15 crafts of a variety of colors, ranging from flashing blue, red, and green, and orange, all over Mount Provost. So right here, they would witness it all. And there was another person from Lake Cowichan who was able to witness that from the distance of Lake Cowichan. They could see it over top of Mount Provost. I thought that was really interesting. Oh, this is the satellite that makes an S. I just thought that was really weird, because the elder sometimes is a satellite for me, and she does these weird crossing, turnings. She will stop. She'll be a satellite, stop, flash. She does these weird activity, and they are a satellite, like just a dot that does weird behaviors. So, and they'll sputter out, they'll putter out, and they'll disappear. Weird things that they'll do as satellites. So they're, again, the observation, right? They want you to extend your belief. That's how I see it, where they want you to kind of push that envelope, where you have to kind of break your mind a little bit to accept the reality that you're looking at possibly a UFO. Ring of fire was witnessed, and that was someone's object, a drawing of a ring of fire. Okay, this one I love too. Again, a man living under Mount Provost saw stationary lights 35 feet from him in a small stationary formation. They remained there all night and got brighter in intensity the harder it rained. In the morning, they were all gone. So again, Mount Provost. And I can only imagine, he's like, so he's called them floating lights. They just sat there stationary. And you're like, what the hell could this be? Like, so paranormal, so weird. So, and he was actually conversing with the UFO BC database, or conversing with the investigators, like, what could this be? Is it bioluminescence? Like, there was no answer. Man was stumped. And again, you know, you got the water, it got more intense with the rain. I just thought that was really interesting. Over Duncan, someone saw a metallic wobbling object with red and green lights. Right? I just thought that was over Mount Provost. In the contact event, I distinctly remembered when it became the Me That Knows Them, I walk out and the air had changed. The electromagnetic field of the air had changed. Well, someone had described the exact same thing. When the UFO passed directly in front of me while it was over Quadra Island, a distinct, almost electromagnetic hum coursed through the air. I just couldn't, that rang exactly with my own description, and I just thought that was really weird. I never heard anyone say that before, and so that was just really consistent with my own experience. Again, just more stuff in Duncan. We're getting to the end here, 100 Mile House.
Before we move on, are you still on Duncan at the moment?
Yeah, not? Duncan, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just wondered if you were going to cover the case of, was it Granger Taylor? The guy who disappeared.
I think so. I did read my own research on that, and I'm certain he actually does blow himself up. It's committed suicide. So he's the one who said he wrote a note saying I'm going to go be abducted by aliens, right?
Yeah, for a 42-month journey or something, which was fascinating. But I'm glad you did some background, because that was another thing that Duncan is famous for. Is that case from 1980, I believe it was.
Yeah, you're right. And I think he also, I think he did it on Mount Provost. Funny enough, the same mountain actually. But yeah, I know he actually, the research behind it was that he actually had dynamite and he kills himself. It's unfortunate. He committed suicide, but yeah, he that was the story that he told people he was being abducted by aliens. Yeah.
But even if there's a logical end to that, he did record that he'd had many recurring dreams of ET contact, and that he felt that the ETs were after him.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the full story. I mean, Vice even did a piece on it. I think you can even watch it online somewhere.
Yeah,
Vice have done this documentary on it.
Yeah, I think it was from the Vice that I picked, that I did my own research on it, because I think that in the end they do put together that he blew himself up in a car. He actually, and all they had was just the pieces left, because it was so much dynamite, and people heard the explosion, but they didn't know what it was. And then it was like months later they put together that there was actually a blast site. There were pieces there, and then they recognized the car as having belonged to him, and then that was kind of the end of it. So yeah.